You're listening to CreepGeeks Podcast. So, welcome back to CreepGeeks Podcast, episode 256.
Listener comment, Paranormal Downturn, Bigfoot or Nothing, and Ghost Hunting 101 EVP.
Yeah. So here we are again. Welcome back to the CreepGeeks Podcast. I'm Greg.
I'm Omi.
We have a lot of stuff to talk about.
Sure.
Yeah. Like, why my mouth, I can't talk, man. Why does my freaking microphone sound weird today? Of all days. There's no reason for it. It just does. It's strange. We do this every once in a while where we have to go through and go, something different? Or is it just the barometric pressure in my big melon-sized head?
Well, I'm getting over a cold, so
yeah.
Everything sounds weird to me.
Everything sounds like garbage. Everything is trash. Okay, so this episode, we do have a lot of stuff to talk about. We do have a couple different ways you can get a hold of us. This is the CreepGeeks Podcast, episode 256, and we're going to start. Ready?
Sure.
Okay, so here's what we had for dinner. It was a delicious pork stew.
Yes.
And with homemade breadsticks.
It was a garden stew, so you should add that part.
All right, look, don't make it out like I'm supposed to be some award-winning food critic person. And then I'm doing it wrong by saying it was a delicious pork stew. If you want to church it up a little bit,
church it up a bit,
then you can. It was delicious.
I'm just very proud. I added
vegetables. Look, man, I just barely know what I'm talking about on a regular basis, and you want me to just go ahead and zhuzh it up a little bit, right?
Okay. Yeah. Anyways, it was good.
Yes, it was.
And the breadsticks were a last-minute decision.
Yes. Which is good. You need a little something.
Spontaneity.
Breadsticks are not
breadsticks.
Okay, look, here's the deal. Nobody gives a crap about our spontaneous breadsticks. What they want to hear about is the stuff that we're going to talk about, the paranormal.
Okay.
Yeah. Our podcast is available everywhere. So if you have a podcast player that you prefer, guess what? It's there. Yep. It's all done by the really simple syndication feed, otherwise known as RSS. So it's funny because everybody's like, well, my podcast is, so what? Everybody's podcast can be available everywhere by using the RSS feed. Yes. Really simple syndication. That's what it's there for.
Okay.
It's like you're not showing off because, you're on iTunes or Amazon. Right? Because if you can set it up correctly, you can be there. All you need is like maybe 5 or 6 listeners. And some show notes.
And a couple of clicks.
And an RSS feed. I mean, there's like millions of podcasts that have like one episode and no listeners. It's true.
Okay.
It's the struggles, man. Struggles are real. There's a lot of people that are like, I've done 10 episodes. Where are my millions of listeners? It's like, man, this ain't it. It's true. It's like people think and it's like, hey, guess what? I'm making a podcast. And it's like, wow. And it kind of leads into, if people don't know, they don't listen.
Yeah.
And the same thing with events. If you want to go to like a Bigfoot conference or whatever, if people don't know, they don't go.
Exactly.
Any event, if people don't know, they don't go. And so how do you get that information out there for people?
Marketing.
Yeah. Social media, marketing. I kind of like to think that social media and marketing are two separate things, and they kind of are, but the marketing part of it is the science behind getting the information out there for people to see. And then letting them make the decision as to whether or not they want to be there. Or go, or attend, or whatever it is. And if you add the sales side of it, they're like, well, how do we overcome the customer's objections to actually making the sale? And I want to smash people in the face when they talk about that kind of stuff. How do we overcome their objections to purchasing? It's like, if they don't have any money, or you're selling something that is 4 to 5 times the cost, the objection would be, they don't have the amount of money it takes to buy it. Mm-hmm. And it should not be the salesperson's job to convince you to tap all these other forms of wealth or income that you may have and make this purchase. Because at the end of the day, that's where the ethics of the sale can really get called into question.
But you could say the same thing, though, about like these events or aspects of like ghost hunting. I mean, some equipment in ghost hunting is not within a reasonable price range to the everyday person. Some of these Bigfoot excursions are outside of a reasonable price range, in my opinion.
Right.
And it would depend on the level of passion or interest on the individual to seek it out.
Right. And that's primarily because the people that are putting out these events and doing it aren't doing the sale. They're not pushing the sale.
Or showing the value of the product. Right.
They treat it, they kind of are acting like it's sort of a passive thing. If I build it, they will come. And that's not how it works. Right. And I'm not a salesman. I'm not. And I can see both sides of the things, because there is a point where ethically, like if you're buying something like a car or whatever, and in the type of environment we're in right now, and by environment I mean like inflation and housing costs and gas and everything else that's associated with it, and everything that's going on just in general with the U.S. It's like, hey, things are, I think, unnecessarily overinflated.
True.
All the way around. Everybody's got a little something. Now, with that being said, how do you get people interested in something without doing a hard sale, right? Like, I'm going to sell you this, and it becomes a hard sale. We're like, today's sale is this, and you're going to buy this, and here's the price, and you have no objections, and everybody's happy, right? How do you sell the paranormal and say the sale is done? We have completed our transaction. You are now interested in the paranormal, and you will always be. It's not like that. You can't do that. Right? Mm-hmm. And so what happens is that you have people that have interest, and they get into the subject or whatever, and then eventually they are no longer happy with the sale. They're no longer happy with what has been sold to them, and they are no longer happy with the product that they have received, whether it's intellectually or physically or whatever. And then the interest dies, and it goes away. Okay. And then you have the survey that says, would you recommend the paranormal to whatever, right?
Yeah.
Now, these little tactics that are used, like, rated number 1 in initial quality and customer satisfaction. Well, yeah. Mm-hmm. Hey, I just got a brand new truck. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
At what point does the truck become a turd?
Or rated number 1 ghost show on this network.
Right. It's like, that's great. Now, when does it stop being the number 1 ghost show on that network? That's purely individualistic, right?
Yeah.
And it's kind of like what we've been seeing with the paranormal. This is around the block to get next door is what we're doing here, but basically what it boils down to is that the paranormal was interesting in a couple different ways. If you look at it from sort of a non-objective standpoint, there was a little bit of allure and mystery to it, right? Mm-hmm. There was a slight amount of exclusivity to it because not everybody's doing it, right? And that exclusivity is like, hey, do you want to buy this flavor of the paranormal? It's got these 2 things that no other flavor of the paranormal does. It's got Corinthian leather seats, right? It's the paranormal Cordoba. And you're like, whoa. Hey, does your car have Corinthian leather seats? And you're like, well, no, mine does. Does it have dual zone climate control? No, mine does. And you're like, ooh. So your paranormal experience that you've bought into is better because it has these features and things that nobody else's flavor of paranormal does. Mm-hmm. And at the end, you know what Corinthian leather is?
What?
It's a made-up sales term. Okay. It's plastic seats are like vinyl. They're not leather at all.
Yeah.
And then, the Cordoba, even that was made up. It's like, oh, this is an exclusive thing sold by Mr. Rourke.
So are you calling blurry photos of Bigfoot or video from Nest camera of orbs Corinthian leather?
Yeah.
And are you saying that due to people's, if we go back a few minutes, are you saying due to people like being shut in due to the pandemic, like we talked about on other episodes, as a reason for them to getting into the paranormal?
It's probably, sure, because all of a sudden everybody has to have a paranormal show.
Yeah.
And it's all over the TV. And you have no choice. You could watch every day a paranormal show all day long.
Yeah.
And you hit the guide on TV and it says going back to 2015, going back to 2008, going back, and you could just watch and watch and watch.
Imagine trying to binge Ghost Adventures.
It's almost as bad as trying to binge Law and Order.
Yeah.
Like 32 seasons or whatever it is, that thing, right? And so what we're looking at here is like, this is leading into a little bit of a rant that I think I have more than Omi has. So did I say that my name is Greg?
Yes, you did.
I can't remember. I'm just a little worked up today. For
However,
whatever reason.
you did not tell people how to reach us.
Well,
so,
I'm getting, you're right. I should do that. Facebook, Creep Geeks, boom, done.
Or
any podcast player, Creep Geeks, done.
you did that part.
YouTube's Creep Geeks, done.
Yes, however, you can also
Toll-free number.
give us a call, and that phone number is going to be 575-208-4025. That is a Roswell area code. Alternately, you can go to creepgeeks.com, click the Contact Us button in the corner, and fill out our little form.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so the point I'm really getting to is in the previous podcast episodes spread throughout the past 250 plus episodes, there's been the idea, I can't say 250, let's just say in the past year or so of podcast episodes, we've had the idea, and it's been an idea, that the intensity and the interest in the paranormal and UFO is starting to wane, and it's starting to dip. Wane meaning as it's not as powerful as it was before, sort of starting to fade a little bit. Now, with that being said, there's been a couple things that have been sort of going on that may bring the idea and interest back to the paranormal, and the idea being that, hey, this is pretty cool and fun and interesting, and we should pay attention to it, and maybe we'll keep learning stuff, and it's okay. It's not going to go away, right? And I'm not saying that the paranormal is a fad. It's been around forever. I actually watched the Paranormal television show talking about ghost hunting and all the methods and stuff that were used, and the show was from like 1972.
Yeah. And
it was like it was boring. It was British, because back then British TV looked like it was shot through, but it was still there. I was like, wow, that was pretty interesting.
And then there was the whole spiritualism movement in the Victorian era, where people were like, it was a thing for like decades,
right?
Because everybody was all into like summoning and Ouija's, seances and stuff like that.
But a lot of that, and okay, so it's funny you bring it up. A lot of that sort of, they had its ebb and flow, but like, okay, so Houdini was big about the spiritualist thing, and he's going to talk to his wife or mother or whoever. So you had popular characters or
personalities.
Well, characters, personalities, pop culture type people, if you could go back and call that pop culture for the time.
Yeah.
That would show an interest in it, and then the popularity or the interest from the regular people would sort of surge and sort of give it a bolster and keep it going for a while. Right?
Yeah.
And, tie that into a little bit of conspiratorial thinking, right? And it just sort of keeps it going. Now, here recently, with all the UFOs and everything that's been going down, and are they really UFOs? And I don't really think so, but I mean, there could be some UFOs. But I think the more I see the reports on TV and read them on the internet and stuff, the more it's technology versus extraterrestrial. I think there's less extraterrestrial and way more technology.
Okay.
And we're just being so inundated with it, it's starting to go away. And I think that we're just getting so inundated with paranormal and ghost shows that it's starting to go away. And primarily, what's going to bring the paranormal and ghost shows and all this stuff back up and make it even more popular and sort of kick things around and make it more interesting is paranormal influencers. And people that do research in the paranormal and they do ghost hunting and UFOs, they all hate paranormal influencers. They're just doing it for the cred. They're just doing it for clicks, views, and likes.
No.
They're just doing it for whatever, right? To get popular and to get famous based off of paranormal. And then, hold on, so the shade gets thrown from one person to the influencer, right?
Should you explain what a paranormal influencer is?
No, you're going to, because that's what you had your mouth. You're like, here I go. And I'm like,
no, I just wanted you to explain it. I mean,
well, explain it. Okay, so a paranormal influencer is somebody that you see who uses social media and puts things out there and makes it appear that they're doing paranormal stuff, right? And from the person who's looking at this, who's probably never seen them before, they see these pictures on Instagram and see the things that they're doing. They're utilizing all forms of social media to influence, right? Like, oh, hey, look, this person on this paranormal page is using this spirit box, or they're doing this, or they're selling a product, or they're trying to sell themselves in a way that people can look at it. And this is people that maybe are not quite so interested in paranormal would be like, man, that's amazing. I'm going to emulate that person.
Okay.
Whereas somebody who investigates or has a more of a real interest to it might be like, wow, that person is not authentic. They obviously don't do this. Why would you go into an abandoned building to hunt ghosts with stiletto heels on, for example, right? Mm-hmm. So they're obviously not authentic. They're disingenuous. And I think it takes the entire paranormal thing and makes it unsavory and basically cheapens what I do. And how dare they make money off of that? Because that's what they're doing it for, Omi. They're not doing it for the cause, man. They're doing it for the money. And they're fake.
Why in the paranormal community is this just now an issue when the same argument and the same concern is present in every other subculture or community? I mean, 2 years ago, it was like the makeup community had the same problem with makeup influencers and beauty influencers. And
it's the ebb and flow, man.
And like, what is it? Like preppers. They're always mad because, like, I think you said last episode, the Bear Grylls knife, you know?
Yeah.
Whereas, like, if you're more into it, you're like, well, what about Les Stroud? You know, that type of stuff.
Yeah. It even goes so far as, like, to go back to the Bear Grylls knife.
Yeah.
People liked Bear Grylls, and then he got caught, like, hanging out in a hotel room or something when he should have been out there sleeping out in the woods and drinking his own urine. Right?
Yeah.
And so now they're like, well, Bear Grylls is a fake. I wouldn't buy that Bear Grylls knife because it's associated with a fake. I bought it for $19 because it's made by Gerber.
Yeah.
And people will be like, well, you shouldn't get Gerber. You should get this. And it's like, you know what? I got a buck 411 knife that I've had for 40 years. I got an extra one that you bought me, which I think you very much appreciated. And a Gerber I've been rocking for 40 years. I don't need an $800 knife to go out in the woods to cut a piece of firewood, right?
And I was influenced to buy you that knife because of Longmire. So yeah. See?
And this is the thing. It kind of goes round and round. And we've said, we've made podcast videos. Let's look at the biggest, I think one of the largest or most popular paranormal people out there. And you can call them an influencer or whatever. And I think to call this person an influencer and to do it disparagingly as a person who hasn't served their time would be it wouldn't be right to say. And that's Zach Baggins. Mm-hmm. And the Ghost Adventures crew, man, they've been doing this stuff for 23 seasons or whatever, and they're constantly doing it, but they catch so much hate because of the way they do their show. So you really can't call them an influencer in the way that Instagram and things like that is what made you popular. But they are an influence in the fact that they keep doing the show, and they are influencing people to have an interest in the paranormal by watching that show.
Yeah.
There's different types of influences. You can be an influencer and put products out there and stuff and let the popularity that you have sell that product or interest in a product. And then you have an influencer who's like, this was a great jazz person. They made jazz albums and everyone loves them and they didn't care and they just did the jazz thing. Mm-hmm. And they influenced your, whatever, your musical taste or whatever it winds up being. And what I've seemed to notice now, we've been saying this for a long time. We did podcast episodes like In Defense of Zach Baggins and Ghost Adventures and all that sort of thing, going back years. It seems like people are starting to look at these influencers, right, that they've never heard of before because they're in a different age bracket, for example, right? And they're starting to look to see that maybe they do have some kind of value to the interest of the paranormal because it seems to be kind of dwindling. Now, there is a whole group of youngsters out there doing the paranormal thing that if you're over the age of 30, let's just say 32 and a half, you have probably never heard of before.
Yeah.
That get millions of views, like 4 to 5 to 6 million views, making a YouTube video about investigating a place that, pick a hotel, pick a hunt, like Stanley Hotel, right? You've probably heard of a couple, famous paranormal groups that you're aware of investigating it, and you watch their videos on it, even their television shows, and maybe have 100,000, 200,000 views, maybe 1 million if they're lucky. Mm-hmm. You get Sam and Colby, I think is what they are. They've investigated the same place. They got 17 million views in like 4 days. And they are definitely influencers.
The people who set up, like, base camps in the deserts of Nevada or Utah or even Arizona, and they do nothing but try to film possible UFOs, and they might, if they're lucky, get 200 to 1 million hits. But then, and this goes back to 2 years ago, because I was ragging on this person. Tom DeLonge stands there with his phone and gets a super shaky video, and that stuff shoots up to like 7 million in like a couple of hours.
Yeah, but some of these influencers you've never heard of, like Sam and Kobe, they go out there and just stand there and they do their 40-minute video and have 10, 15 million views.
And Tom DeLonge was frontman of Blink-182.
So right, but he's in the wrong age bracket.
Yeah.
He's in the wrong age bracket. True. I mean, if you're over 35, 40, yeah, you know who that guy is.
Yeah.
You know, we watched the show where it was Rick and Morty. Or what's the girl's name? The sister, Summer?
Yeah.
And and Rick's like, have you ever watched Die Hard? And she's like, I'm 17. Of course I haven't watched Die Hard. And see, these people
but she Die Harded so well.
Yeah, well, she read the end of it when she was taking a crap, right? So if you haven't seen the latest Rick and Morty episode, we probably gave it away, but you'll be okay.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the point I'm trying to make. There is a group, a whole generation of people that if you've been in it for a minute, you're like, wow, these kids, they're just trying to be influencers. They need to be influencers because they're actually bringing in people.
And it's sad.
And don't get me wrong, they're making money. They have merchandise that they sell. They're selling their next coming up videos. They're doing the deal. They are working social media in a way that anybody out there today who is like, let's just say your standard sort of, Bigfoot person, UFO person, ghost person.
Yeah.
They can't touch. They have not a clue how to do it. We don't either. I mean, because it's like when you can say, hey, catch my shirt, my new merch is coming out, and they're in the middle of a ghost hunt or whatever. And if you get it right now for $29.95 or whatever, and you're like, and you go look and they've got millions of dollars of merch sales.
Yeah.
And these kids are like 22, 25. Yeah. They're doing something right.
And it hurts too, because there's some of us, like, who are always going to be, and I'm not putting myself in this camp, but there are some people who are always, because it's their strength, going to be a paranormal researcher.
Right.
I got into a similar debate about this with somebody at the Arts Council that I belong to, because it's like, at my core, I'm an artist, but I also have to be an influencer, a marketer, all these things, just so I can keep being an artist. But I recognize that struggle, and I don't fight against it. I work to incorporate that influencer part into my ability to be an artist.
Well, you kind of have to, because if they don't know.
But to fight against the grain and to shout to my maybe 60,000 followers, oh, don't follow the influencers, they're disingenuous, that's a waste of my effort. I should take my effort towards that 60,000 followers and be like, I am an artist and I am capable of this.
And those people that say that aren't living in 2022.
Yeah, so those people who spend that effort to debase the influencers, great.
And I'm not saying that they're not living in 20. I'm saying that they're not living with the current technology and how things work in 2022.
Yeah.
Because I got to tell you, and there's people out there that will basically impugn somebody for trying to make a little bit of money, whatever, make an income off of it, right, and putting the work in and doing it. They'll impugn them for making that money and say, well, you should be doing it. And it's like, okay, so what you're telling me is that you're a content consumer, not a creator. Or if you are a content creator, nobody's seeing it because you're not living in 2022 and you don't know how to make people see it. So you're throwing shade on somebody for trying to feed themselves while going out and doing and pursuing your interest and hopefully sharing your interest with other people so that they too can be interested.
Yeah.
And they're putting no restrictions on it. You can be as interested as you want. You can be interested in a new T-shirt. You can be interested in watching the video for free. All they're asking for is a click, like, and subscribe kind of a thing, right?
Yeah.
Or you can sit there and whine about it. And what I'm seeing is there are people that are starting to maybe change the idea behind that. And you would be surprised how quick some of these people who really want to impugn content creators and influencers who are trying to further along the idea of the paranormal while selling themselves a little bit, how that tune changes when they get monetized, they start making money.
Oh, yeah.
Shocking, isn't it?
Suddenly.
It's like, oh, you want me to drive 300 miles to this place, do an investigation, spend 8 hours editing and upload it so that you can basically tell me that at the end of it when I say comment, like, subscribe, or let an ad play across my video that I shouldn't do that? It's like, dude.
Oh, what was... So coming up soon is going to be like International Ghost Hunting Day, and we've been looking for places to ghost hunt.
I think that's tomorrow.
Or
it might be today.
Oh, I thought it was like the 23rd, 24th or something like that.
It might be the 23rd, 24th. I don't know.
Yeah. But I was looking for places within 300-ish miles of us. And one of them, it was literally like that. Greg and I would drive 3-4 hours.
5.
Yeah.
It was 5 hours.
Well, this is another place I didn't even tell you about. We'd be driving about 3.5-4 hours. We would only get to investigate for 5 hours. If we found something, yes, we were allowed to bring some of our own equipment, and some was in apostrophes, or quotations, sorry. If we found anything, we had to credit the organization that hosted the investigation of the building. And their credit had to come before ours. And I was like, but look, I'm the one who put in all the work.
I understand why they would say that. But if I'm booking time and I'm paying for it, your credit comes after my dollar. And if we did something like that, and if you're listening and you're one of these people that put on events and stuff like that, if we go ghost hunting and you let us live stream or whatever, because that's furthering the cause, my credit comes before yours, especially if I'm going to pay you $200 to go investigate all night.
And that's what it was.
Per person.
Yeah.
Yeah. And see, and that's all part of the sort of the thing of it. You know, people get ideas, but I think the idea that influencers and people that typically get scoffed at or whatever are actually going to be the ones that further the paranormal.
Yeah.
Now, if you are going to put on an event, or if you're looking for something to try to get influence out there and do your thing with the paranormal and all that stuff, and, you know, maybe put on a fun event for the kids and all, if you don't put Bigfoot in there, because Bigfoot's the only thing that's really growing.
Yeah.
Like in an excessive way. You know, it's growing in popularity. It's more popular than ghost hunting. It's more popular than UFOs. It's more popular than all of that stuff.
At least here in the South.
Everywhere. No. I mean, you could drop, anywhere you want to go, you make a Bigfoot festival, you'll get more people. I guarantee it.
Okay.
We've seen it.
All right.
And the reason being is like we've said before, it's safe.
True.
Bigfoot is soft and cuddly. Come bring your kids to see Harry and the Henderson style Bigfoot, not the rip your arm off and stuff you in a tree 25 feet in the air Bigfoot.
Yeah.
You know, not the snarling monster that throws softball-sized rocks at you.
Yeah.
And so, and this whole thing is not really a rant per se, but it's just the idea that, you know, hey, if they don't know, they don't go.
If you say that, you know, put Bigfoot in there, make Bigfoot involved. People who are already in the community, they'll be like, oh, okay, well then I'll just call it a paranormal and arcane cryptozoology metaphysical extravaganza.
And nobody's going to go.
Why?
Because they don't know what you're talking about.
So
if I put Bigfoot and arcane kung fu extravaganza, or whatever it was that you just said, people are going to show up.
Yeah, because
bring the kids. You can pet a real Bigfoot.
Not everybody is going to know what a cryptid is.
Right, or 14.
Or they might send you a message asking you to buy cryptocurrency.
I have tried my hardest to just basically block these people that constantly want me to do this.
You have to, when it comes to marketing or social media or being an influencer, you have to use the KISS method. Keep it simple, silly.
Just say stupid. It's a PG podcast. We could say it.
Apparently,
keep it simple, stupid.
Apparently, we're not supposed to say that last word no more. It's bad. So
here's the deal. There's so many things that are bad that are unnecessarily bad. I can't keep up with it.
But getting back to the original point, you have to keep it simple. Not what most of the people that you're marketing and you're advertising and go towards don't really know what cryptid means. But if you put Bigfoot and ghosts, people are going to come.
Yeah, well,
yeah,
cryptozoology. And so talking about influencers and things like that, and we're also talking about the TV stars that are making paranormal shows and stuff that are actually bringing a completely younger generation into the whole cryptozoology, paranormal, UFO, you know, the big ones, right? Ghost hunting, Bigfoot hunting, or cryptid hunting, if you want to call it that, and UFO stuff. Lots of these stars, and a lot of people don't know who they are. And that should tell you right there. If you don't know who, like, I don't know anybody. Kesha. I don't listen to it, right? It says I'm not influenced by their music because I don't listen to it. You know what I mean?
Okay.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, for my generation is probably a stretch. Meatloaf was famous enough right, with his music, that when he said he was doing paranormal and it became obvious he was a paranormal sort of guy and doing this stuff, people knew about it. But again, I'm 17. I've never watched Die Hard, right? So, and the reason why I bring this up is because, like I said, I think the tide is turning, and that maybe some of the idea that influencers out there that are younger, doing things differently and doing their own thing and utilizing 2022 for all of its resources to continue their efforts and endeavors, I think is going to become more accepted.
Okay.
We've been talking about this for a long time, probably longer than most people out there who've been doing podcasts or doing cryptid research and all that, because they've been hardcore. Oh, they're not legit. They're not real. They're fake or whatever. And we see the old geezers doing it. I mean, older geezers than me telling me that, oh, well, that's not how you should be doing it. That's not how it works. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, well, you have no results, right? This method seems to be showing results. And at the end of the day, as far as I can tell, it's kind of the same thing. Mm-hmm. Can't say one way's wrong or the other. If your way's not working, let's utilize some of the modern technologies.
Yeah.
The internet is real. There's a lot of people out there that think it's not real.
Still.
Guess what? It is. It's been around long enough. It is a real thing. If you can basically do banking online, if you buy a product and it shows up to your house, it is real.
I saw something the other day, and it was like how there are fully formed, fully functioning adults, I'm talking like 25, who have grown up with complete access to the internet.
Yeah.
And that's because, like, I thought, I'm 41. My household was lucky. We had internet when I was about 11, 11 years old. And now there's kids that are now adults, like adults, and they have the internet's always been there. And it's just mind-boggling that access to information, that access to paranormal evidence or resources or basically interconnection through different communities is there. So
it used to be you had to go to a library, dig in a book or buy a book and all that sort of thing. And, now you can sit there and lose one day of sleep a week, staying up late and cruising around the internet, because to kids these days, it's a utility.
Yeah.
I mean, it is. And think about this, kids that have just been born in the past couple of years will have never known that there was a Queen of England. It'll always be a King of England.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of one of those things. I'm glad to see that some paranormal people and influencers of their own way, whether they do podcasts or research or whatever, are starting to maybe look at some of these younger generation and other influencers that are trying to peddle their self and the idea of the paranormal forward, because it's fading, man.
Yeah, and that's the other part. I mean,
and we say this because pretty soon Mothman Festival is going to happen. And everybody's like, it's going to be the biggest event ever. And it might be, but it might not be.
And it's going to have a bunch of younger influencers there.
Yeah, hopefully.
And that's the thing. I think we need to not be so harsh to these influencers. And even if you can't bring yourself to being an influencer or carrying that influencer mentality, then accept a different role. Be the researcher that you are, but make yourself available to the influencers.
That's going to be kind of hard, because those influencers they're not even in the same orbit, because who wants to hang out with they're not there. They're in their own thing because it makes more sense, because they catch hate, discontent, and heat from everybody else. They don't have time.
I mean,
why bother?
When people want to come out to this area, I let them know I'm a researcher. I research this. Feel free to ask about this,
Yeah. So maybe it'll get better. So anyway, it's kind of a little bit of a 30 minutes talking about stuff, but this is something that kind of came up here recently, and this is a documentary. It was a movie made about Marilyn Monroe, and it has Ana de Armas in it. Mm-hmm. And she came out and basically said, and she's kind of an influencer in her own way, and this is that Marilyn Monroe's ghost haunted her during the movie Blonde, which was the name of the movie.
Yeah.
And it sounds pretty spooky if it's true. And that's kind of like, So she's a famous person.
Yeah.
Famous movie actress who's been in lots of movies, like Blade Runner 2049 and all sorts of other stuff, that somebody's going to listen to what she has to say and maybe will, eventually pick up a EMF detector. But they probably won't. They'll probably just use their phone. They're just going to download an app on their phone and get busy, right? So she plays Marilyn Monroe in a movie called Blonde. And during a press conference for the film's Venice Film Festival premiere, she claimed that Marilyn herself was present during filming. And she said, I truly believe that she was very close to us, and she was with us.
Yeah.
Right. And, she said that Marilyn's ghost was present during filming and would make her presence felt, especially if she didn't like what was being filmed.
And then I think she was happy, Anna explained. She would also throw things off the walls sometimes and get mad if she didn't like something.
Yeah.
Maybe if she wasn't being depicted the way she wanted to be or something in the movie.
And then she said, maybe this sounds very mystical, but it's true. We all felt it. And so even the director, Andrew, backed her up. He said it definitely took on elements of being like a seance, like some of it, right?
Yeah.
It was like if Anna ever sees Marilyn's ghost and sees this in quotation mark, maybe she can ask her about all the controversy surrounding the film, too, because there was some controversy. So it'll be on Netflix September 28th if you want to kind of see what's going on. But they didn't really give like any real specifics about aside from stuff flying off the walls and just getting that overall feeling.
Yeah.
And that feeling is something we're going to talk about next in the podcast, because we actually got a comment from somebody who follows the podcast. He's a patron, and I don't know if he wants me to use his name or not. So I'm not going to use his name.
Okay.
Because he might want to. Yeah, I could have reached out to him and asked him, but I figured I'd surprise him because he actually listens to the podcast. But he put a comment on one of our YouTube videos, and I can completely relate to what this guy is saying. Mm-hmm. Right, and so I'm going to read it. It says, we were intending to do some pre-investigation at a place basically called Grace Bible Camp on St. Helena Island in South Carolina. The plan was to check it out during the day and return that evening. And it says Steph and I arrived around 10 a.m. So he actually does investigations and stuff, and he's doing it right.
Yeah.
You show up, you do a pre-investigation, get an idea of what's going on, and decide, are you going to go back, are you going to do it, or what are you going to bring? Basically doing what you're supposed to do. So just showing up and hoping for the best, right? So the plan was to check it out during the day and return that evening, right? The crazy thing is, I was so spooked that we did not get out of the car.
Wow.
We snapped a few pictures through the car windows and took off. I do not know if it was a negative force that pervaded the site or how sketchy the location looked. I've never had that feeling in the past. And I continued to feel uneasy for about an hour after we left. Needless to say, there was no follow-up investigation that weekend.
Yeah.
And I completely understand and know that feeling that he's talking about.
Yeah.
So, is that relatable to us? Yeah. Remember, we were trying to go buy, we were looking at houses to buy a long time ago. There were certain houses we didn't even have to get out. I'm like, no, let's go.
Yeah.
Are you sure you don't want to go in there and take a look at it? Because our realtor at the time, Tom, I'm like, no, Tom.
Oh, wait.
We're done.
And sometimes
I don't even have to get out of the car.
Sometimes I would be like, okay, let's just get past the feeling. And we found this one house. It was amazing for our needs in the sense that the garage was bigger than the house. The inside of the house was all this classic retro wood paneling. The wiring was a little questionable, but it was laid out well. It had a full, it had a motorcycle / restoration garage in the back that was fully functional. The house creeped me out so bad I kept walking outside to breathe. Yeah. Because I felt like I couldn't breathe inside the house.
Now, me, on the other hand, was totally willing to overlook the 1,200 square foot house for the 3,600 square foot 4-car garage with lift in it.
I know, right? It was wonderful.
And it even had an apartment in the garage above,
yeah.
And I was like, we don't have to live in the house.
But
I felt uneasy there too.
Yeah.
And so did you. And see, that's kind of what the feeling that he got. It's like it's wrong.
And then
something's not right about it. And it just basically presses those buttons that say, don't come in. Don't do this. You're better off every way to just leave.
Yeah.
Stay away. Warning. Keep out. All of that stuff happens. And it doesn't have to be one of those in your face kind of feelings. It's just this slow dread or just slow intuition or something that just basically says, you shall not pass. And in almost the point where you physically aren't even able to do it if you wanted to. It's like you couldn't override that feeling to not go in there.
Virginia has some places like that for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
I've been to a lot of places that are like that for me, where you're like, let's just go here. I'm like, absolutely not.
Like an entire park in Virginia, Northwest River Park offers camping, horse riding, concerts, geocaching, all sorts, and nature photography. Great place. The further back you get into Northwest River Park, the more unsettling it is, to the point where our older dog, Ben, he would not hike past a certain point.
Yeah, there's places where I've been. It's like I have absolutely zero interest in being anywhere here, and I will never come here again, and I don't care.
So,
and you're like, let's go a little further. I'm like, no, I'm done. I'm turning around and I'm walking away.
And to the point where it almost feels like there's a physical boundary there.
Yep.
And I'll push. It's in my nature to push, just try to push that boundary a little bit. But if it gets too bad, or if my feeling is different, then I'm not going to do it.
Yeah. Sometimes you push, and I'm like, so you're going to be the one that gets taken first. And it's like there's a difference between pushing the boundary and knowing it.
But I have a different read on it than...
Well, and that's individualistic towards it. And see, that's the entire point, right? So he had this feeling that it's not worth the time, the effort. It's just something's off about it. It's just like, no.
Yeah.
And I totally get it, right? And, if you're listening to the podcast and you've ever had that feeling, you should let us know. Because I know some people who've sort of dibble-dabbled, is that a word? Dibble-dabble? Have sort of been into this kind of thing. Eventually your instinct or whatever it is that tells you don't do this, you just don't.
Yeah.
Some people listen to it more than others.
Oh, I have that feeling about, and it's not just haunted places. I have that feeling about places that are in use, Oh,
yeah. Well, that's the entire point. It doesn't have to be like an old haunted house. I mean, it could be anywhere. Like there's just certain places that we just wouldn't go.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't care if we ever go to that place again. And one of the places that is, so anyway. So I was trying to figure out what do you actually call that feeling?
Yeah.
As it relates to the paranormal. And I came up with a couple different things, but I don't think this is the actual name of it, but there's a couple different. This one is clairsentience.
Okay.
And you get that paranormal feeling, right?
Yeah.
And it's like...
I've actually heard this word before.
Yeah,
so,
and now some of it is like, they do it in a way to where it almost makes you sound like you have to be a medium, to have this sort of experience, but you don't, because this term doesn't fit it exactly the kind of the feeling, but like feeling energies with your hand and feeling energies elsewhere, and feeling colors as communication, feeling nature, spirits.
That sounds like synesthesia to me.
Well, no, but I mean, I understand what they're saying.
Yeah.
But, feeling colors as communication, that doesn't have to be synesthesia. That would be, I think, a little bit of a different sort of thing. Like red would be angry, whatever. You see what I'm saying? Like using the colors of the aura to help communicate feelings of intent, right? But you just have this, is it intuition? Is it like an early warning system? Like, what do you call it? And I don't really know what the name of it is. If you could figure it out, let me know. But that sort of led me to looking into, okay, so if you have this feeling because for whatever reason, foreboding, just whatever it winds up being, how do you know if spirits are around? Because it's going to lead into that.
Yeah.
Well, then you must be feeling some kind of negative spirit energy. Well, how do I know? How do I know if it's freaking spirits around? And I found a website.
Yeah.
Seems to be legit because it's called Sensing Spirit. I'm like, well, let me look at this.
Okay.
And so I looked at it, and here are some ways that you may or may not be able to determine that a spirit is around. Right?
Okay.
So, and it talks about like spider webs or cobwebs. You ever been to a place and you feel like you have a spider web or a cobweb on you? Mm-hmm. And you're doing a ghost hunt or an investigation? If you don't actually have a spider web or a cobweb on you, that feeling could be spirits.
Okay.
Now, and they talk about the spiritual significance of whatever it is that you're feeling, right?
Yeah.
So the spiritual significance of feeling cobwebs or spider webs on your face, for example, or somewhere like that. The ability to feel spirit is called clairsentience. This ability to feel spirit also helps you sense the energy of those around you, and it's an ability that can lay dormant or may open up as you spiritually awaken.
Or if you break your neck.
Yeah. Well, so if you've been working on being more compassionate, understanding person for those around you, you may be able to start, experiencing this spirits, right?
Yeah.
So the idea of, a spirit trying to communicate by the feeling of cobwebs, brushing against you with the whole cold spots, something pulling on you, pulling your hair, all that thing sort of comes into play. And it's like you may be experiencing a spirit. So what does that spiderweb sensation mean? They kind of say that a spiderweb can be a good sign and often represents creativity. And I'm like, okay, well, it's like it could be a sign that you've stepped through an energy veil as well.
Okay, that's...
So you're starting to roll your eyes, but have you ever experienced anything like that?
So this is where I kind of have a issue with the way this article, and it's no fault to them, but maybe they're not looking at it from my perspective. Yes, I understand energy veils, and I understand certain feelings. And to say it's all spirits, I kind of have an issue with, because when we went to the Southwest, when we lived in New Mexico, both of us, and in many instances for me, though, I could tell that there was something there. It wasn't necessarily a spirit. And that's because I put a divide between what is spirit, like a spirit in the sense that everybody understands, and what I consider elemental.
Well, we're not there.
Yeah. So for me, a lot of energy veils and things like that, I consider elemental. So that's why.
Well, what if you have, ringing in the ears, popping in the ears, right? Mm-hmm. What do you think that is?
Could be either.
Nope. It's a spiritual energy zone. Right?
It could be.
I mean, this the whole thing goes back to sensing spirits, right? Whether you're going through the energy veil, you're experiencing it, you may have goosebumps, you get psychic chills, you can have a flush of energy, temperature changes, feeling nauseous, all that stuff maybe that you're either in a realm of spiritual energy or you're experiencing a spirit.
But we've also described those same things for when you enter in that bubble of silence around a Bigfoot sighting.
Yeah, like the Oz effect, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
And see, it's hard to make a distinction between spirit and energy that they're talking about. Mm-hmm. I have experienced some of these when I was a little too close to the radar on a destroyer.
Yeah.
Because, that's radiating energy. It's microwaves. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you get a little close, you get a little weird feeling. So it's just kind of one of those things, right? And that's kind of the whole thing. I don't think you can necessarily feel a spirit individually versus feeling the spirit or the energy of whatever's going on. I think that you're probably more likely to have to be something like a medium or something like that.
Yeah.
Which is, then going to use like the images you see in your mind and just knowing something about an area or knowing something about a random stranger person that you've never seen or heard or anything like that in an area that you may or may not be investigating.
Okay.
Like the whole mind's eye thing. Because I think a lot of people think that when you see a spirit, you physically see a spirit standing in the corner. And that is one way, but a lot of times you're more than likely going to see it in your head. It's just going to pop in there for no reason.
Yeah.
You're like, why am I thinking about that? I have never seen this person before.
Or it could even just be a feeling that pops into your head, but stays in the forefront in a certain way.
Yeah. And you start tying some other stuff together, like a little bit of goosebumps. The whole spider web sensation, the cobwebs just coming on you. Yeah, man. So I don't know. It's all so muddy when it comes to this kind of thing, and you really have to sort of figure out
but I think
what the deal is. Now, this is the time of year where you can go stand outside and concentrate and have a spider web fly on you.
Because it's that time of year.
Yeah. I had walked through one yesterday just for no reason.
I walked through one putting our trail camera up today. That was so fun.
It just makes me wonder if the spider is like, oh, got him. It's like he just busted through his web. Got him. That's what I think. He's on me.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, he's going to get me.
Oh, there's a big one up in our field, and he's just huge.
No, he's not.
I do not.
I'm not going up there. I don't care. You can go up there all you want.
Yeah. Nope. His web, one strand goes from one tree all the way to the other small little sapling we have out there.
Which nobody knows the distance that is.
Which is about 20 feet almost.
So you really mean 12 feet? Or
no,
8?
Because he's from the other tree.
So how did he get it to the other side?
Wind. I don't know.
Possibly. Or he just jumped.
Spirits.
So I can tell you spiders can jump 20 feet.
Oh, gosh. Don't.
That's like snakes. Snakes can jump 10 feet. Come right at you, 10 feet away.
Yeah, double their body length.
Easy. Sometimes quadruple their body length. So anyway, I thought it was kind of fun because he gave us that comment. I'm like, I can totally relate to this. There's been places that I'm like, I'm not going.
Yeah.
Don't even have to get out of the car. Crack the window down. Like, nope. And you're like, are you sure you don't want to go? I'm like, absolutely not. See, I think a lot of times when we go to some of these places, you're excited, and your excited overrides that sort of dread feeling.
No. It's not necessarily that it overrides a sense of dread. It's that I want to explore it further. I recognize the possible bad elements, but I want to test those limits, and I want to understand it more. So as long as I keep within certain boundaries, I think I'm going to be okay.
Well, see, yeah, you can stay in your boundaries, but if the other stuff, if their boundaries aren't the same as yours, which is why you'll be first.
No, that's how you defend yourself.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. You defend yourself.
Hiya! Kung Fu, right?
I'll use my metaphysical Kung Fu.
Wait,
okay?
let me rinse my hands with sage. I'm about to put a spiritual Kung Fuism on this person, right?
But I do think your research into finding the term basically clairsentience, I think it's right. I just think we've found two different websites that kind of muddy the
it's all muddy. That's the problem with this stuff. It's all muddy.
But I do think
but there may be another term for it that's maybe less woo-woo and more like, oh, that gut feeling you feel, is not terror. Like if you like in a naturalistic way. And see, we've talked about this many times in the podcast. Like you can have a natural fear, a fear of bears, lions, tigers, bobcats, whatever you're afraid of, and it's a different type of fear than something that scares you to your core.
Yeah.
Where you're like, I'm running, and hopefully I'm faster than you, because I'm not fast. You know what I mean? To just to get you, and you can have fight or flight with a naturalistic animal, and we're not talking like megafauna animals, like a giant bear or a thunderbird, which may be a giant bird or anything like that. Just in general, like Dogman, Sasquatch, scary alien demon or whatever. I think would scare you more to your physical core than just, oh my gosh, a bear. Kind of a thing. Because we know that people aren't that scared of stuff. They do it all the time. Hey, look, a big lumbering bison. Let me run right up on it. And you're shocked when you're like, cartwheeling 15 feet in the air.
But I also, that's a totally separate conversation because I truly feel that humans are getting so detached from nature and environment that they're losing that sense. I even feel that some humans have either evolved or lost, because I don't want to call it evolved, but they've lost their sense of uncanny valley.
Right, so you know what that's called, right?
What?
Or what they're called.
What?
Prey.
Vulnerable. So, but just losing that sense of boundary between, or recognition, I should say. Recognition of the unknown and recognition of the possible dread or the possible negative outcome. I think that should be a whole podcast in itself, because it's like these people legit do not realize you shouldn't go within 20 yards of an elk or within 50 yards of a bison. You should not be pulling up your Lexus next to a bison and going, hey, let me take a picture of you with my iPhone,
And you shouldn't poke a snake with a GoPro on a selfie stick. They may not like that.
No.
Ask me how I know. Right?
Even if it's a bull snake.
Yes.
So
here's the deal. So if you're having these feelings, you don't know what they are, don't know. Maybe you should basically look for 10 signs that you may actually be psychic. Of the sixth sense.
Okay.
So anyway, here's 10 signs that you may be psychic. You ready?
Okay.
So these are in no particular order, just to kind of round it out and make it exciting. You hear voices. You read thoughts. You see auras. You have visions. You sense the past when holding objects. You experience deja vu. You have divinatory abilities. I guess that means like divination.
Uh-huh.
You have a well-developed intuition. you know when trouble is imminent.
Okay.
So it doesn't say, hey, I got like 3 of these. Does that mean I'm like kind of psychic?
Well, it's not a BuzzFeed quiz, so there's that. It
was pretty close. It was pretty close.
It's so vague, and it doesn't even.
Well, it's not vague. I mean, you can go through and read through all the points of how they try to explain, how that ties to you being psychic. And honestly, I don't have time for that. That's a lot. It's a lot to go through.
And you could take the same list, change like maybe 4 words in it, and be like, 10 signs you might have an emotional problem, or 10 signs you might be too stressed. I mean,
you can make it super crazy and say these 10 signs mean that you might have something like schizophrenia.
That's what I was trying not to say that.
Well, you know what?
Yeah.
Hey, let's not mince words.
Like these people.
Right. So, yeah, I was like, well, that seals it.
Yeah.
So what if you don't really have all those? And see, what gets me is I want to see something that says you have these experiences or these 10 things in certain spots or areas or places. Now, what is that actually called? And I can't seem to find the definition. You know what I mean? Or the descriptive term to say that, if you ever gone somewhere and you've had these weird feelings and you've experienced these things, that maybe some of these are in that 10 question list thing. Like, what is that? And you step away from it and it changes or it goes away. See, that's kind of what I'm looking for, because that's kind of the feeling that, that came off the listener comment. It's kind of like that's what I was trying to figure out, how to find that definition, that term, that descriptor to say, yeah, I've had that too.
And see, in different situations.
And whilst I was there, I experienced these things that basically set off my,
see, in different situations.
Psychic, whatever.
It gets described as being like an energy vortex area.
Or, it could. It doesn't have to be an energy vortex.
Or people loosely using or incorrectly using the definition of, that area is a portal of energy.
Yeah. And
because it can inspire or can trigger in an everyday person visions or auras or things like that. Like everybody swears that parts of Arizona are just, areas with high concentrations of portals, to the point where people make treks or meccas out there, and an everyday person will have a vision, or an everyday person will have, some sort of connection to the past out there.
Well, who knows? Maybe it's possible.
And I think it's funny that we relegate this Sedona, Arizona as a place of having portals, when a portal could literally be, or vortex or whatever we're going to call this, could be down the street, could be around the corner, could be the old building that your favorite ice cream shop's in. You just don't know.
I don't know. I think it has to be a lot of environmental things to make that sort of thing conducive to having a portal.
Well, yeah. The ice cream shop I'm talking about, that building's been there for hundreds of years. So, it could be, what I'm saying is it could be anything if it meets certain criteria.
Yeah, well.
So.
I don't think your local Baskin and Robbins is going to.
No.
But, and what's to distinguish that from like fairy and fae and everything else we talked about in our previous podcast?
Well, we have that, we have that really old town near us, and there's like this one group of buildings there that I think there's something up with that group of buildings, and I've had people, that was the other thing. Yes, interest in the paranormal may be diminishing, but I've been doing work out in a small North Carolina town, and people see my little CreepGeeks sticker, and I've had 3 different people walk up to me in the past week. Are you a ghost hunting team? And I'm like, well, I'm a paranormal researcher. And then they just
say yes. Don't church it up.
We don't do ghost hunts like every day, because
nobody does.
And, 2 of these people. Do you do ghost hunts? Can we get on your next one? When do you say we can go anytime? Do you do weekends? And I'm like, on weekends, I'm reading about UFOs. I don't know what to say.
No. Just say, nope. Sorry.
I'm like, sorry, my weekends are for Bigfoot.
Okay. Now, what you're going to have is 2 people cruising around with you as you go walking through the woods because you say you're doing Bigfoot.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
And see, the question I get is, where is a good place to go?
Yeah.
And honestly, there aren't that very many good places anymore. And I think, honestly, COVID has killed a lot of places.
True.
So maybe that's probably why the interest is waning. I don't know. But anyway, if you don't know if you're a psychic and you've got those 10 signs, just be aware. it might be possible that if you're in a spot or an area or something like that, and you start experiencing some of those 10 signs,
Yeah.
and it's not something crazy like you're sick or food allergy or whatever, you may be experiencing something that's leading to something else. See, because what I want to call the entire thing is radar. You know, my paranormal radar went off, my paranormal early warning system went off, or whatever it wanted to, you know, and my instinctive, and I got to get away, or I don't want to partake, or I don't want to be into it. And I don't know, there's a term for it. I'm sure there is. I just don't know what it is. So last week we actually kind of included the beginnings of Ghost Hunting 101, and we found an amazing website that actually sort of laid it out way better than we ever could. So we looked at some of it. We put links to it in the show notes, like we have everything that we talk about. And we're kind of going to do the same thing. This one actually talks about EVPs, and it does a really good job of basically breaking down sections of how EVPs allegedly work, how the equipment is, how you can do classifications for, like, is your EVP an actual Class A, which means the best, you know?
Yeah.
How to analyze EVPs and make sense of spirit voices, how to conduct an EVP session, online courses in capturing and analyzing electronic voice phenomena, and some of the best EVP recorder recommendations. And it even goes into the past with, like, some of the older things, like the paranormal phone experiment, and also how to capture EVPs outside our hearing range. And what's outside our hearing range that we've actually talked about on our Patreon only, or patron only exclusive Patreon podcast. We did on infrasound.
Yeah.
Infrasound. So rather than talk about all these, because it's a great resource to kind of look at and sort of do it, I'm going to talk about that one, how to capture EVPs outside our hearing.
Okay.
And I'm not going to go through and read everything on this page or do anything like that. I'm just going to basically sort of give you an idea how it can be done. So, you know, anyway, you ready?
Yeah.
All right. So there's often talk in the paranormal field of capturing voices that are outside the human range of hearing. And, you know, they're talking about maybe calling this EVPs or electronic voice phenomenon. Now, if you're trying to capture sounds that are made outside your realm of hearing and it falls to a certain level, those are infrasound type noises that can be either heard or felt, right?
Yeah.
And it basically says if a voice was outside of the range of human hearing, it would be speaking at a pitch so low that we can't imagine how it would even sound. On the other hand, if the voice is at a frequency higher than the human audible range, it'd be beyond any piercing high-pitched sound we've ever heard. And there's many cases where an EVP has been captured where the person playing it back and reviewing the audio has recognized the voice as someone they know. And that's one factor that basically makes our individual voices recognizable, is that the frequency at which we speak at. People don't talk at the same frequency.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we'd all be monotone.
Yeah.
Right? So when a voice is recorded using that of a camera or an audio recording device, the frequency of our voice remains unchanged in that recording. So that tells you that a recording device perfectly preserves the pitch of any voice it records. Therefore, if any recording device was able to capture a voice outside of human hearing range, when it's played back, it would be unchanged and still be beyond the frequency range of the ear, meaning it's inaudible.
Okay.
So if it's beyond your realm of human hearing and you record it, it's still going to be beyond the range of human hearing. So when people are like, I think I heard infrasound and I've recorded it, and they play it back and you can hear something, how did they make that sound hearable to you? Because it's not the actual recording. You have to influence it in a way that you can actually hear it. So you have to assign it something to make it to be heard. Yeah. Just like sound out in space, like we played in our last podcast, doesn't make any sound at all until it actually hits something. And then we can actually hear it.
Yeah.
Because it's beyond our realm of hearing, right?
Yeah.
So if it's out of the range of human hearing and you can't hear it, there's no reason to think that basically it is an EVP, other than it may actually be an EVP, but you won't know because you can't hear it. And that's the part where I thought that was pretty interesting, because that was, been the way I look. It's like, well, if you can't hear it, you can't hear it because you're physically unable to hear it.
And see, I've had
if you're over the age of 30, you probably can't hear that weird high-pitched tone that teenagers can hear, right? It kind of goes the same as that.
And see, that's been floating in my head since we've been talking about this for a couple episodes now. I'm like, but wait, that means something has to be added for me to hear it.
Right.
Or you're somehow modifying the results in a way to make me hear it, which in itself is modifying the evidence. Or
right.
So I'm like, that just almost makes it not evidence.
Well, I mean, sure, but it has to be usable.
Yeah.
And if you can't use it because you can't physically do it, then it doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
Okay.
When you do audio recording and you make it better, whether you add bass or treble or whatever it takes to make that audio better, it's called sweetening. You're sweetening the audio. Now, if you're trying to do an ultra low frequency sound recording, like I'm going to record infrasound, which a lot of people think that they can do, sounds that basically fall at a frequency lower than the human ear can pick up are called infrasound. They're very hard to record. And you can't just buy like a microphone, an expensive microphone that's capable of making that recording because its recording level will catch it. It's like even the best microphone is designed to only capture audible sounds. And even though there are purpose-built infrasound microphones available, they'll set you back about $500. So you're not just going to go get an old crappy Panasonic recorder from the 80s that's voice activated and record infrasound. I mean, you may record some sounds that are lower than what the human ear can hear, but upon playback, you're still not going to be able to hear them.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the noises captured by some of these audio devices are self-introduced noise. Like the electronics, the microphone, how it actually processes sound makes noise. It makes its own sound, and that gets recorded. And, you can basically increase and decrease the sensitivity of the microphone, which may introduce self-noise, and that's called gain. So when you see people do an EVP session, and then they turn it up using the gain knob, they're just making it louder.
Yeah.
So now your brain interprets a lot of the staticky garbage mess as being an EVP, which becomes wishful thinking.
Yeah.
And so that's why we don't use some of these older devices. We use devices that only record within the realm of the range of human hearing and sound pretty clean. So that when we actually capture an EVP on our little $100 Zoom H1N or H6N or our field recorder and all the other stuff, chances are what you actually recorded is something that's been recorded, not just like, I think it said, I like brown cheese.
And that's my thing, because like all this added gain, all this added hiss, all this stuff that has influence because you're not able to detect offhand, so you're turning things up or you're adjusting things. Right. My brain doesn't find the words. My brain doesn't try to make a logical leap to, like a audio pareidoia or audio hallucination. I can't hear, I like cheese, or I'm
brown cheese.
Brown cheese,
right.
Or I'm a ghost. I just keep hearing the gain
static
until it bothers me. And
now,
I get upset.
and that's okay, because that's how some people are. Yeah. Concentrate on the background or can't distinguish the background, whatever. You can't pick out details from the background.
Yeah.
Now, there's other people that can, and those people typically have higher rates of concentration and can distinguish between all the noise and a specific thing.
I just can't do that.
Hold on.
Audio-wise.
Those people are called men. Let me explain. Back in the caveman days, right, when the cave ladies were picking berries and protecting kids and doing all that stuff while the men were out hunting, they had to be aware of everything.
I would assume the ladies have
Let me finish.
Keep an eye out for predators.
Let me finish. I'm explaining it. I'm not being disparaging. You're getting all worked up. Just pay attention. They had to be aware of everything. They had to be
calm down.
Just right. Calm
really?
down. Yeah. Shh. I'll explain. Right. No, but they had to be aware of everything. They had to be aware of animals coming out of the brush, coming off the hill. They also had to be aware of things like, is that berry red? That's bad. If it's orange, it's good to eat. If it's slightly orange, they had to be able to distinguish all that stuff, right? Mm-hmm. So the idea is that they could concentrate or pay attention to everything and pick the things that were basically helpful or not helpful.
So you're saying hunters.
So they had to pay attention to everything, whereas hunters had to take everything and only pay attention to the one thing and let everything else go away. So they're out there. They're looking, everything's crazy. There's a bunch of stuff going on, and they're looking for that movement. They're looking for the one animal they want to kill.
So the
gatherers
to feed the families and protectors had to be more aware of colors and all sounds, whereas hunters
And everything.
And hunters had to be aware of one sound.
Yeah, they had to look through all the chaos and find the one thing, because that was the goal. So you got a dude who could sit there and basically watch football and everything, the whole house will be on fire. And they won't know, they won't be paying attention to it because they're paying attention to the one fucking thing.
Do you think that's changed any?
I mean, sure. Because now we have to multitask, and most kids these days are grown to multitask.
Yeah.
And so a lot of that has gone away. But if you go back to the base primary level, that's pretty much what it is. Same thing with EVPs. Now, you have jobs that you still have to take all the noise and discern a specific thing and figure out what it is. And basically that would be like hunting sonar or using sonar to hunt submarines by sound.
Well, just
you take all the background noise, the static and stuff, and you're listening for that one repeating pattern or whatever to determine if it's something like a propeller spinning or whatever.
Just going out here in the woods, out here in the south, where we have all these crickets and cicadas and tree frogs and stuff. And lately I've been hearing a very interesting wildlife sound, and I keep hearing it at certain times, but like my sister-in-law can't hear it, or somebody else can't hear it, but I hear it, and I hear it at certain times of night, and I can hear it through the tree frogs and the cicadas. But when I open my phone and try to record it,
no way, it records everything. It just becomes a staticky mess.
All I hear is the tree frogs and the cicadas,
right?
And it's so annoying.
That's just kind of how it goes.
I wish I had like a...
Now, the only way you could actually do something like that and sort of separate that noise and be obvious to the point where you say this is what that noise was, is to use artificial means to do it. Like with infrasound, for example, to use artificial means, you'd be using a microphone designed to actually pick up infrasound, but you'd also be using a device designed to show you the frequencies of things that are making noise.
Okay.
So you'd be looking at a little graph, and when you see a spike that happens around, negative 18 hertz, you'd see a spike there and go, yes, I definitely heard something. You didn't actually physically hear it, but it's showing up on the spectrograph, or it's showing up on the audio, whatever you're using, spectrometer, whatever you want to, depends on the device you're using, right? So if it shows up on the scale, the graph, there's a noise there.
So if you're saying, and we'll use our backyard as an example, if I brought out like the Zoom and I go sit out there all night, which is scary, and I hear a certain noise, let's say whether it's Bigfoot or bobcat, either way, because bobcats are capable of some level of infrasound, right? Or mountain lions, I should say.
I mean, possibly, sure.
Yeah, I think it's mountain lions. And I take that audio recording from all night and I put it into software on the computer. Even though I may not have physically heard Bigfoot or the mountain lion, it will show on the software.
Possibly.
Oh, okay.
I mean, there's a bunch of, then you're getting into the environmental factors that determine whether or not you can actually see that.
And yeah, because
how far away that bobcat is.
Yeah.
How many things are between you and the bobcat, or the device and the bobcat?
Yeah.
What's the humidity like in the air? What's the moisture content? Is the wind blowing? All those sort of environmental factors determine what you're actually going to see or not see. Now, when you do sonar, it's things like water conditions, temperature conditions, all that stuff sort of affects sonar ranging and actually hearing, whether you're making an active transmission like a whale, which can do infrasound, and they can make a sound that's heard all the way around the world, or a higher pitch which has a shorter sort of distance that it can be heard. So all that stuff's sort of commonplace. So if you want to try to maybe track something and maybe be able to see something, you probably need to use something like a bat detector. Because a bat detector is designed to detect bats, and bats use what? Infrasound or ultrasound. Basically, it's sonar to emit a sound, and it hits a bug and bounces back to the bat, and the bat knows where that bug is, right, based off of how the sound got back to it, and that's called echolocation. So you could use a bat detector to hopefully know that you've captured some kind of infrasound, but you're still not going to be able to hear it. So you need a bat detector that can be tuned, to pick up frequencies between 15 kilohertz and 130 kilohertz, which is far beyond what we can actually hear. And it's not really a recorder, though, so it doesn't really record. Instead, it converts the ultrasound into lower frequencies, which are in the range of human hearing. So this device, when it actually detects ultrasound, will create a sound for you to hear, like a beep or a buzz or whatever. So you'll know you got something, but you don't know what it is. Because it won't be like, I'm going to reproduce the sound of the ultrasound in a way that you think it should be heard. Like, it's not going to come back and play a voice for you.
Okay.
It's just a detector. Like, you could do the same thing with a light bulb. If you had a bat detector hooked up somehow to a light bulb, and once it detected infrasound or frequencies that happen below the range of human hearing, it would light the light bulb. And you go, I got something.
Okay.
Which is kind of like seismometers and things like that to use vibration and oscillation. So yeah, I don't know. So when you have people that say, yeah, I recorded this and it's infrasound and let me play it back for you. No, you didn't. There's got to be a way. So, but I mean, a bat detector can be relatively inexpensive if you're interested in capturing infrasound. But if you want it for ghost hunting purposes, where it can go, I like brown cheese below, it's not going to happen. Now, that's not to say that you can't physically transmit sound, and when it hits something, you can hear it the way it was meant to be heard. That's something completely different. That's like when you read or hear about the CIA and spy stuff, where they can basically take a laser and use the laser and the beam of the laser to communicate, so that if you're standing there on a street corner with your newspaper and your umbrella waiting for the handoff, right, of spy gadgets or information or whatever, and you're sitting there and basically you hear in your ear from an incredible distance, you assume, I'm over by the trash can, and nobody else can hear it. That's something that can be done using like lasers and stuff like that, where they can take a laser and shoot it at a window.
Yeah.
And you'll hear sound, message, music, whatever coming off that window. But the moment you take it off the window, you can't hear it.
Oh. Okay.
And if you kind of want to experiment with that, you can use these bone conducting headphones, and you can stick them on your head, right? They don't go in your ears. They basically sit on your head, and it takes the bone of your skull or wherever you have it set, and it transmits using a transducer the sound into your skull. That skull resonates and creates the words and song that you hear. Mm. Neat, huh?
Yeah.
So there you go. So anyway, I think we've talked enough. We've done quite a bit.
Okay.
I don't really have anything else to say. I may or may not have dropped an F-bomb in here somewhere. Maybe, maybe not.
You're just trying to get them to listen to the episode twice.
You'll have to see. Just saying.
Well, I do want to thank everybody for tuning in. And thank you to our Patreon patrons for basically helping us keep the show going. If you are interested in supporting us on Patreon, we have a link in the show notes, as well as everything we talked about today. I also encourage everybody to check out the Etsy shop right now. The Etsy shop has all of our new stickers in stock. So if you want to grab one of the CreepGeeks stickers or anything like that, visit our Etsy Crafted in 10. Okay?
Sounds great.
Yeah.
All right, so anyway, there you go. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, please let us know. But this particular episode was CreepGeeks Podcast, Season 6, Episode 256. Listener comment, Paranormal Downturn, Bigfoot or Nothing, and Ghost Hunting 101 EVP.
Yeah.
But in this case, it's more like infrasound. So kind of is what it is. So yeah, anyway, there you go. So see you later. Take it easy. Bye-bye.
Bye.